I think the thing about golf is it's life shoved down into a small, 18 hole type of experience with very vivid things that happen that cause pride to surface, to well up in undeniable ways. Hey friends, welcome back to another episode of Links for Life. And this is going to be a great episode. It's kind of a piggyback episode that I have with my good friend and special guest, Joel Suggs, who has been on Links for Life a couple times back towards a little bit more of the beginning days. And we had in our initial discussion, Joel and I, a great conversation about humility and golf. And this is kind of the companion episode flipped on its head, because we're going to talk today about ego in golf. And so many of us maybe work to try to become more humble, but the big enemy of being more humble is our ego, or perhaps, as Joel will talk about it, the way pride shows up in our game. And so Joel is a great person because he's a phenomenal PGA teaching master teacher. And so he knows the game so well, but he's also, I think, given a lot more deeper thought to the way golf is a mirror in our lives. And so I'm really looking forward to this discussion that Joel and I will have to talk about the place ego plays in all of the different ways and forms in our life. So let's go at it. Joel, welcome back to Links for Life. It's fun to see you again after a little time not having as many conversations. So thanks for being back on with me.
Yeah, thank you for ringing me up again, Tommy. I look forward to visiting with you again.
Yeah, great. So I'm going to kind of let you kick off maybe our conversation with what are the things that you think about when I raise the topic of how ego plays into our golf game?
Well, the first thing I would think of is that I don't use the word ego much in my life. I know Freud used it a lot. Do you know if he invented it?
No, I don't know whether he invented it. He used it in a very, a little bit more specialized way than
Yeah, of course.
most people typically do, but I don't know if he invented it.
It might even be Latin.
Yeah, it's the word I in Latin.
There you go. Yeah, that's where it came from. It just popped in my head. It popped back to my 4 years of Latin in school.
Yeah.
He didn't invent it. Yeah, it was ego. Yeah, that's what I thought. So I don't use that word very much. I hardly ever use it, but I do use the word pride a lot.
Okay.
So I tend to think, like you mentioned, humility, maybe the converse in a didactic world, in a dichotomous world, would be pride, humility, and then pride. So, and I just think of it that way because, it's kind of the bigness of me, the bigness of I. And as I'm sure we're going to talk about all the ramifications of that.
Yeah. Are they ego and pride? Are they somewhat synonymous to you?
In the little bit I've thought about the word ego, my first blush I would tend to say yes.
Yeah. I think for me mentally, I do see how they are functionally the same thing. Often the way I use the word pride is thinking too highly of myself whereas I think of ego sometimes as just simply thinking about myself and caring about myself, um, which ego often for me shows up because of, as I think pride does too, because of my insecurities, because of how little I think of myself, that in my own mind I am very uh, insecure about who I am, which then causes me to try to want to puff up myself in the outer world that I live in. And that puffing up myself can sometimes appear as confidence. Um, if I'm really, really good at it, it can appear as strength, but underneath the surface, it's actually just insecurity. So,
I fully agree. I fully agree.
yeah. So there are lots of different angles that I think I would love to touch on. I'd love to know if you have some thoughts, because I think one of the places that ego shows up is in our identity that we have on a golf course. You have a very clear identity as a golfer, as a master PGA professional teacher. How does that play in for you? How does pride play in?
I love this topic. I absolutely love this topic, Tommy. And just like I love the humility talk that we did previously. Uh, there's a way of speaking among general semanticists. You know, like at college, you have physicists and mathematicians and English majors, where you also is kind of a field of study called general semantics, and they're kind of one aspect of English where they study how the words we use affect our thinking. Okay,
Yes.
you know, so I could say I'm fat, or I could say I'm obese, or I could say I'm big boned, or I could say I'm husky. You know, so these words all are describing me, but they all have a different heart and feel and vibe that they communicate.
Mm-hmm.
Correct. So,
Yes.
so one of the things they will say is some of them don't like to use the verb to be or any of its forms. Am, is,
Right.
are, was, were. All you have to do is think of the Beatles song, I Am the Walrus. You know, I am he as you are me, and we are all together. So be, being, been, am, is, are, was, were. So when you say, and I say, I am a PJ master teacher, well, now in almost everybody's mind, yours and mine included, and everybody watching and listening today, immediately certain connotations pop up, right?
Right.
If we said, Joel, I am a PJ professional. Well, certain connotations that are a little different pop up, right? So, again, the question you've asked, man, it's a lifetime to me, really, Tommy. This is so significant. I am a child of God.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I can also say I am averaging 1 over par for 18 holes the last 12 months. And I guarantee you, it feels still very, and that's the truth, by the way, of my scores the last 12 months. But it feels one day away where I would also say truthfully, I am a 16-year-old boy in Billings, Montana, and I average 130 for 18 holes.
Mm.
When you talk about identity, man, that identity, even though it's 50 years removed, that identity of I am 130 shooter for 18 holes in golf. That identity to me, man, is about 1 day away. It feels like yesterday.
Because that identity is still kind of in your soul memory.
Exactly, baby. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But and I'd also tell you this, man. I also am the guy that has the longest hair in class
Yeah.
50 years ago. All right.
Yeah.
So, and that is an I am statement. Again, I am the guy who has the longest hair in class here. I'm pretty cool. Now, I moved to Billings the beginning of my junior year, leaving the inner city of Chicago, where my hair was down to here. And soon after moving to Billings, my friends at the hospital where I worked said, Joel, you should probably cut that hair if you're going to go driving in the country anywhere in these small towns. If not, Joel, they'll cut it for you. Our Montana friends in these small towns will cut it for you, Joel, if you don't cut it yourself here in Billings, the big city of Billings. So again, this whole thing of I am, and I have to come to terms with the fact that I am not the guy who has the longest hair in class anymore. Now that means so little to me. That means nothing to me. I don't mind being bald at all. All right. Now, in the last couple of weeks, I've noticed gray. For whatever reason, that's bothered me a little bit, Tommy. And I see we share the same attributes here, except you have a beautiful head of hair. But so again, I am a guy who averages 1 over par for 18 holes now in the last 12 months. I am a PGA Master teaching professional. So I kind of laugh at all those I am statements and say, when I think of the totality of my 24-hour day, I kind of put on the costume and wear the garb of a PGA Master teacher for 6, 8, 10, 12 hours a day. But I also understand these other things that I am. And that's why these people are careful to say, be careful with the word to be and I am, because it carries so much weight.
Yeah, I really agree with you. I think that a lot of people hearing this would say, well, now this really is just semantics that you're talking about, and it's not really significant. But I do know that there is a difference that is being communicated if you say, I play golf as a professional for a living, and saying, I am a master PGA professional. One is claiming that is who you are in your essence. And the other is saying, this is something that I do. And when you choose one set of words versus another set of words, you are claiming essence to it. And I think that's significant. If I say I am a 5 handicap, I am claiming that is part of who I am, not what my scores happen to be at a time that, a year from now might be, vastly higher or vastly lower. But
Exactly.
I am claiming some type of identity to that. And the minute that we claim that identity with those am verbs, then we are called in some senses to live into that identity.
Right. Exactly.
And that's what messes up us so often on a golf course, is if people know who we are, they know something about how we play golf before we get started, either because they've played with us before or because we've told them who we are.
Right.
Then all of a sudden we have to live
up
into that.
Yeah.
And usually that means we got to at least make sure we're living up to that, as you said.
It's a terrible place to be.
It is a terrible place to be. It's a no-win place to be. I mean, maybe there are occasions where we outperform our spoken identity, but there's not much satisfaction in that.
Right.
But boy, there's a lot to lose when you underplay the identity that you put out. Yeah.
It's a terrible place to live, man. And that's why I've enjoyed not using those verbs for the last about 35 years. I first heard of that little language called E prime by the general semanticists called E prime. I first started using that language about 35 years ago. And I immediately found that it had incredibly important ramifications for my mental health, my spiritual health, my walk with Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell you, man, and it has incredible ramifications, less important, obviously, though, to my golf game.
So
absolutely.
Let's, we're going a little bit kind of off topic, but not really so much.
Right, because this is ego. This is ego.
Right. It is.
Yeah.
It is ego. And I think the thing about golf is it's life shoved down into a small, 18-hole type of experience with very vivid things that happen that cause pride to surface, to well up in undeniable ways. I've said it on this podcast before. In general life, I don't find myself fighting anger nearly to the extent that I find it, because I'm more in control in general life of the appearance that I let out to other people, whereas I'm not in control of that on a golf course. On a golf course, I can chunk a shot in such a way that so violates the identity that I have in my own mind and in front of other people that I have no choice but to get angry. I do have choice, obviously, but
right.
So
but what it indicates, again, right? It indicates your being. It indicates your ego, your pride, your identity. And like you've articulated already in our conversation, you didn't live up to what you thought you are, what you thought you were. And again, I feel very strongly there's a solution for that. And we'll talk about it, I hope, before we finish today. But these are the things. These things just take minutes to talk through.
Yeah, they do, because there's a subtlety to it,
right?
And
exactly.
And I do want to come to that solution sooner rather than later in this. But one thing that I've come to realize about ego or pride is that it's not just about how I want to appear in front of other people. Right. Yes, when I am in front of other people, I have an elevated opportunity for pride to rise to the surface. But it has just as much to do with who I tell myself I am, which is why I can get just as angry playing a round of golf by myself where nobody sees that chunked shot as I do when I'm in front of other people, because of this thing that I'm protecting inside of me that says I'm better than that.
Right.
That I am this kind of golfer, not that kind of golfer. And when I do something that so clearly violates that sense of who I am as a golfer, then I get mad about it. I don't get so mad about hitting, a shot that is so much better than who I am as a golfer, because then I just start to redefine who I am as a golfer. I am the person who can hit that shot. But boy, when you underperform, that insecurity rises, that frustration, that anger rises. in such a way, whether I'm playing with someone or not. Now, with certain people I'm playing with, that opportunity for it to rise to the surface grows because my insecurity grows. So ego shows up whether I'm playing by myself or with others, which I think sometimes perhaps people think it only shows up, when I'm trying to present an image to other people. But we're equally trying to protect the image that we have inside of ourselves. Yeah.
Well, the old country song says, theologically speaking, wherever you go, there you are.
Yeah. Yeah.
Your ego, my ego, transports with me wherever I go, whether I'm playing with people or not. And God is with me wherever I go also.
Yeah. But you have, from my perspective, you have a greater challenge when it comes to managing pride because of your career, what you do for a living, and therefore what you think other people are thinking about you, and the image that I would imagine kind of surfaces pretty significantly of how you want to appear to other people. I would think it would be really, really hard.
And it has been over the last 45 years. But I tell you what, with a whole lot of prayer and God's grace and the Holy Spirit helping me and being honest, more and more honest with myself and with my friends, my wife, my students, my children, it's glorious. I love enjoyable humility, honest humility. I love it. But I guarantee you that I'm sitting here now as a 65-year-old man. But I guarantee you, man, at age 25 and 30, when I was first a pro, man, it was a lot tougher. It was a lot tougher. And then also, let's add some more pressure to it. When I was that 16-year-old man in Billings, Montana, young man shooting 130, and my high school civics teacher said, Suggs, you ever heard of Louise Suggs? I said, she's my aunt. He says, oh, let's get you on the golf team. He was also the golf coach. Let's get you on the golf team. And I said, okay. And I had lived in the inner city for the previous 3 years. I was forbidden, my brothers and I were forbidden to even talk to our Suggs side of the family because of my mom leaving my dad and divorcing him. But he heard my name, and immediately now his expectations thought this Suggs kid that just moved here from Chicago is going to be a great player for our Billings High School golf team. So
wow,
I said,
that's
well,
pressure.
Okay, at least I had clubs, some Louise Suggs, beautiful old McGregor irons and woods. At least I had clubs. So I went out and I shot my 130 in the tryout.
Yeah.
And he said, well, maybe next year. I mean, he was crestfallen for me.
Yeah.
So Tommy, if you want pressure, how would you feel if you're, again, any of these famous guys, the Nicholas boys, the Woods kid, Annika's child, all those father-son teams you see, those kids, those boys and girls, you have even more pressure when your last name is a famous golf name.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I was learning about that as a very young man. And that was before I was a Christian. But yeah, you're asking me if there's more pressure, and I would say in that sense, yes. But there's also more joy in learning to live away from that pride, that ego. That's one of the reasons I feel so enjoyable about my game, and I love my game more than almost anybody I know. My self-image as a golfer is just, I'm totally in it for me and God. I play golf for me and God in that sense. I'm totally self-satisfied, and I'm not a hypocrite. I don't have to act. When it comes to ego, I think hypocrite is another good word. That faking, acting, pretending, pretentious, pretension, deceit, those kind of words all get wrapped up in hypocrisy and the ego if I'm trying to fool people into thinking that I am something that I ain't. And my solution, part of my solution is, well, just don't be that, Joel. Just be honest and work on your game and just play your game, and people are going to think what they're going to think. You know, so you're exactly right. And what I've learned is that I had to train myself as a young man, young professional, to just say, you know what, I'm just going to have to play better. I am a PJ Pro that averages about 80 or 85.
Right.
I had to admit that about my identity, and say I'm a child of God that's loved by God and my wife and my kids, and say, that's just one of the things. Again, I am bald. It's just not that important, you know. So I am a PGA Pro that shoots 80 to 85 currently. And instead of trying to fake people out and say something different, I just said, yeah, that's my score is 80 to 85, and I just said, Joel, quit being that person. Quit being that PGA Pro that shoot that. Get better. Work on your game. Be yourself and be happy about yourself.
Yeah. One of the things I remember so distinctly that you talked about in our earlier episode on humility that I loved, and um, I've worked to embrace more, is you said that uh, when you finish a round and someone says how you played, you just give them your score. You don't add color, explanation, in essence, to it. It's just a number. The number is a fact. And by doing that, you are, in essence, training. You used that word just a minute ago. You are training your mind to not allow pride to enter in, which enters in the form of explaining why your score was what it is, giving excuses, in essence. I shot an 80, but I missed 3 putts that I could have made, and that is, in its essence, I mean, it's maybe nitpicky in some people's minds, but it is, in essence, a form of pride of trying to posture and explain that you could have been better. We don't very often say, well, I shot a 75, but it could have been an 80. We don't generally explain away things that direction. So I love just the simplicity. And you said, I'm not a hypocrite. And a lot of people would say, well, that's a really prideful thing to say. But you've actually just trained yourself to not give yourself the opportunity to be a hypocrite, because you're giving nothing but a factual number. And when people are watching you, they're watching nothing but the way you play golf. There's no opportunity for hypocrisy to come in. And I love that. And then you've added in this enjoyable humility, which I think a lot of people would say, isn't that an oxymoron? They would think about it that way. But in essence, by not allowing pride to come in, you have freed yourself up in such a tremendous way. So I love what you're saying. It's just kind of like, I want what you're saying, because it would eventually, if I believed it myself, I wouldn't get angry when I'm playing by myself, because
Right.
I'd say, well, I am a person who chunks the ball.
Exactly. Occasionally. I
Occasionally.
chunk it every once in a while. I also hit perfect pitches from time to time. So if you take the word am out of it and you just go by the facts of the actions, you say, you know what? And I know I average 2 pitches per 9 holes, and I get both of them on the green. And 7% of the time in the last year, I have missed the green with a pitch. So those are facts.
Yeah.
So and now it's up to me to interpret that and put a description on their reality and say, well, that means I am a terrible pitcher of the golf ball. I only hit the green 93% of the time. Well, if you want to call it that, Joel, and interpret it that way, then you go right ahead. But I don't want to do it that way. I just want to say both are true. 93 out of 100 times I hit the green with my pitch. 7 out of 100 times I haven't. So it takes away the pretension and we're just dealing with facts, it's like having God's video on myself and my golf game, and I just want to accept the facts. They said Moses was the most humble man on the face of the earth, and I think it's because he accepted facts. That to me is humility, accepting facts. If we spend our time thinking about ways to color the facts to other people, we have found our ego, we have found our pride, and we have found our attempt to be a hypocrite and to try to fake people out.
Well, and I think I would add to that that facts are not identity. Facts are simply facts. So
Right.
I can choose to say, I am a golfer who occasionally chunks the ball. And in a sense, I'm saying something that is factually true.
Right.
What's a better framing of it is to say, I chunk the ball on occasion, because the first one is an identity statement. It's saying,
Right.
this is who I am. I am, this is my identity as a golfer, and which then probably promotes the fact that I'm going to continue to live into it. If I simply state, I chunk the ball sometimes, then, that's just a fact. It has really nothing to do with who I am.
And it does not mean that you will chunk it on this current shot you have. One shot at a time. Be here now.
But I'm more likely to do that, to chunk it, if I've stated it as identity.
Right. No kidding. That's why I like to stay away from am and be and go by the facts of what am I really, if I wanted to use that word. And I say the facts. Yeah, man, 7% of the time I miss the green with a pitch. So I feel pretty stinking fat and sassy over pitches.
Yeah.
I've seen myself hit 1,000,000 pitches the perfect distance.
But you also know that when you miss a pitch, that happens because factually you only hit 93%.
Exactly. It doesn't bother me. When I miss, I say, yeah, I have that technology. I have that technology because I hit a little thin. I got a little scared of it and I pulled my arms up a little bit and hit a little thin and I missed the green. I have that technology. Just like I have the technology to keep my arms extended, turn right down through, get the little divot out front, and hit a perfect pitch, the perfect distance. Again, so I'm not surprised by that. I started telling my Christian friends about 30 years ago, I said, you know what? Because again, this is along the same lines of this conversation we're having today, Tommy. I said, guys, you know what I'm starting to conclude? I think the biggest arrogance pretty much that I'm seeing for me, and maybe for some of you guys, my friends, is to be surprised when I sin. Oh, I can't believe I was impatient with that person in traffic. I just can't believe it. I can't believe it. I would sin like that. I can't believe that I was impatient with my wife. I'm just not that kind of person. I can't believe it. I'm surprised. To me, that's the biggest arrogance I can have. And so that's why the humility we're talking about here today and the ego is to just accept both as facts. Dizzy Dean says it ain't bragging if it's true. That if I hit that pitch the perfect distance, goes right up by the hole, it doesn't surprise me. It's true. And I told you, I said, hey, Tommy, I hit that pitch up there a foot from the hole, man, from this little bad lie out here from 30 yards. Emotionally, I don't feel like I'm bragging. I'm just saying that's the God honest truth. God saw the video on it. He saw it. And in the same token, I say, yeah, I missed that green with a pitch. Welcome to life, Joel. Be a big boy. Can you take a punch? Bright lights, big city.
Yeah. You're capable of both.
Welcome to the NFL. I mean, give it a break, Joel. I'm capable of both. And my facts tell me I'm pretty doggone good at it. And, so I just enjoy that.
Yeah.
So there's a nice equanimity and a nice kind of magnanimous outlook we can have toward ourselves when we learn about this ego and pride versus accepting the facts of humility.
It's so good. One of my favorite authors, an older classic Christian author, a man named Fenelon, wrote in these letters that he was writing, he said, when we are surprised when we do something wrong, we are just exposing the pride that we have, that we think that we have elevated to be beyond that. We shouldn't be surprised at all. This is who, this is where we are with God at this particular point in time. So don't be surprised, accept it, confess it, and move on. And I love that. Uh, so I think we've kind of gotten right at the crux of so much on this pride. I would actually like to spin this now for a minute and take off what you talked about of I had to train myself, that you have trained yourself. Because here's what I see. I see, particularly with a lot of younger golfers, them fighting anger, tremendously. I see that still in me at times. And I see in my golf game pride showing up in very explicit, technicolor ways that I often don't see in the rest of the area of my life, not because they don't exist, but because I'm better at masking them, of denying them. And so this is one of the things that Links for Life is hopefully about, of using golf as a mirror, as a training tool, not to just score lower, but to be better people. So you've talked about, I have trained myself. What I would love to be able to maybe just focus some time on, and maybe this is the substance of our time, is what are some tools that you have found for yourself and for others that can train some of the pride out of our golf game, that can perhaps help us enjoy the game more because we're not fighting frustration and anger. What if you were not a master golf teacher, but a master pride trainer, and you were simply doing that on the golf course, what's been helpful to you to help train pride out of your golf game?
Christ's forgiveness. So I'll explain that.
Okay.
So, and gathering facts, like I said, being honest about the facts instead of trying to color facts and spend my life thinking of ways I can trick people into thinking the facts about me are better than they really are. But it's Christ's forgiveness, Tommy, because I think if you are at an NBA halftime and they say, Tommy Thompson is here at NBA halftime for your entertainment, he is going to dunk a basketball. And the crowd laughs and they say, okay, let's see what happens. And Tommy goes up and he tries to dunk the basketball and he fails. I don't think Tommy's going to be mad that he failed at that, because he had not been resenting himself for failing at dunking a basketball in the past, and because that's the past, and in the future he did not expect to dunk it anyway. But see, you expected to hit that pitch perfectly and you chunked it. So I think this is for me and for almost everybody else I know. The anger comes from the resentment of ourselves. And therefore, we knew we were going to do it. So the anger comes from the resentment. You didn't know you were going to dunk that basketball. You knew you weren't going to dunk it, so that's why you didn't get mad.
Right.
When you failed miserably in front of 20,000 people, it's like, yeah, buddy, I kind of knew that's me. So I'll tell you this story. This is one of the ways this came home to me. Our son is 29 now. He's a fourth generation PGA or golf professional. He's a PGA member here in town. One of the better players in the region his whole life. And when he was about 6, I took him to the PGA golf show, the PGA show in Orlando. From Cincinnati, we traveled through the winter down to the warm Florida, Orlando. And we stopped in Atlanta and played Mystery Valley Golf Course, beautiful course near Stone Mountain. And in the Bermuda, in January in Atlanta, it's about the color of my skin, and it's about as smooth as my skin. There's no fluff in that
Yeah.
Bermuda in January, and it was wet, matted down Bermuda. You live in Richmond, you know, you feel my pain.
Yes.
But I'd had great memories of Mystery Valley as a kid with my dad and the pro there, Jim Yates. And so I said, Taylor, let's go play. I want to play Mystery Valley. And Taylor was 6 years old, but he's game. It was about 40 degrees. And so we go, and on the last, I think it was the last hole probably, I had thinned about 3 wedges that day. In the last hole, I thinned another one, and I slammed my club into the ground. And here's my 6-year-old son, who's been brought up around Christ-type things his whole life. And so I was ashamed of it, of course. I don't even know if I apologized. But, you know, he saw it, and of course he was taken aback. And so we go up there and we finish the round. And guess where we go that night for dinner? We go to my friend's house who helped me become a Christian in 1981. And this is 2003. So he's an old friend, a very Christ-like man, because we're staying with him. He's letting us stay with him. And at dinner that night, my son describes what happened on the 18th hole.
Oh, goodness.
And I just had to not say a word. Just like I say a number, I said, there's nothing for me to say. Or I think I might have explained, I got so mad because I thinned another one off this dormant, wet, flat Bermuda. I might have explained the facts of why I got so mad.
Right.
But I'm ashamed to say, and again, it was because I had done it so many times before and not forgiven myself. I did not have a clear picture that this is just another wedge. I can hit this well. I still had doubts in my mind and unforgiveness toward myself going into the shot. So that's why even before my follow through is finished, I'm displaying anger, which was in my soul, because I had not forgiven myself and forgotten the previous wedge shots.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, the solution, Tommy, to this pride and arrogance and ego that all of us are tempted with, I'm sure, is to learn the forgiveness of Christ and learn that God loves me no matter what. No matter what I've sinned against my son or my wife or my daughter and against myself, whatever, and just say, you know what? I'm forgiven. The past is past. Forget it. Why was I thinking that? It was something in the past that I had not forgiven, that I didn't realize Christ had forgiven me for, and he took the punishment. In our justifiable minds, especially the white Anglo-Saxon Protestant mind, somebody needs to get punished for that wrongdoing. That's the whole public discourse, you know, on TV nowadays. So he's doing wrong. He needs to get punished. You know, we're all pointing the finger. We're really good at pointing the finger at other people's sins. So Christ forgave me. That is over, Joel. Forgive yourself for it, you know? And I think that I've found that takes away a lot of anger.
Yeah,
in my life.
but I think you've also hit at the crux of something. I do think that we get angry at ourselves, and we don't let go of things. But I
Right.
also find that's actually very true of us outside of the golf world. And though many of us who claim Christ, who claim that we are followers of Christ, we understand intellectually that Christ has forgiven us of all the things that we've done wrong. And yet, so many of us are still unwilling to forgive ourselves. So
Right.
somehow we've come to the place that we at least assent to the belief that God has forgiven us, but that's not good enough. And we will still be angry and unforgiving of ourselves. And I think that that same type of thing happens in a form on the golf course when we get angry because we haven't let go of those things that happened before.
That's
And
what I mean.
it's
Absolutely.
the not letting go of the things that happened before. You know, if we did something and it was the first time it ever happened, uh, in our entire golfing life.
It's water off a duck's back.
Yeah, we don't think that much of it, but because it's happened before and we haven't let it go and we have claimed those pasts as our identity, then we just we just can't handle that.
We keep
And
pounding ourselves.
we keep on pounding ourselves, you
I
know.
sliced it again. I sliced it again. I always
Yeah.
slice. I am a slicer. I sliced it again.
Yeah.
So, well, I agree with you, buddy. You keep thinking that way, it's going to stay that way. And that's why I'm
Yeah.
saying the forgiveness combined with the hard work. If I say, oh, I can't believe it again, I went and got laid or something, I'm immoral. It's like, well, okay, buddy, believe it now. It's true. Now repent and go do something different. You have to do something different. You have to talk to your friends. You have to chain yourself to a car or something. I don't know. You have to do something different to quit that behavior. Gee, I went to the bar again. I got drunk again. Well, that was not a smart action to make the decision to go to the bar. So, I mean, I got scared on that roller coaster. I didn't like that. Well, you made a decision to get on it, Joel. You shouldn't have made the decision to get on the roller coaster, and you wouldn't have had that nausea and everything. So that to me, Tommy, is absolutely the solution, is to get out of this pride and stuff. And that's why it's so fascinating to me and so deep and profound and historically changing all of history when Jesus says, believe. Just believe. I love you. And just look him in the face and say, yeah, I can't forgive myself. Look Jesus in the face. Think about him on the cross and resurrecting and say, I don't believe you forgive me. I don't believe you taking the punishment for my wrongdoings is good enough. I mean, that's a pretty bold statement to make in the face of Jesus and God and the Holy Spirit. So that's why it's like we've talked about all day today. It's a spiritual matter for me that absolutely affects my actions and heart and soul on the golf course. And engenders a bunch of enjoyable humility.
One of the rounds, probably the round I remember the most, which says something, was the worst round I had last year, which was, let's say, was probably about 9 strokes higher than my average score. And it was in a tournament that I wanted to do well in. Interestingly enough, I had 2 rounds in a row that hit that same score. And they were accompanied by a beautiful 11 on a par 5. Some really terrible golf that I played. But the beauty of it was playing that badly. I got to the end of the round and I realized that nothing had changed. I was still the same person and I was going to go home. And frankly, nobody really cared about my score. I mean, my wife, Wheezy, showed, some very thoughtful sympathy for me.
Compassion.
Yep. Yeah, that, lasted, a minute or two. Nobody cared. And I can remember walking back to the car after shooting that score and having this thought that, that was about as bad as I could imagine. And I realized, and it doesn't matter at all. It has no significance to my life other than it was just a bad round. And all of a sudden, it freed me up to play terrible golf. And it didn't really matter at all. And I came back the second day and I thought, there was part of it that when I'm so far out of this that there's virtually no chance of doing anything beyond maybe getting to the middle of the pack. So I'm completely freed up to play. And then I played equally as badly. And I thought, and it doesn't matter again. and it was completely freeing to me. So I guess all of that to say is in at the core, if what is the most important thing to me is my golf, then I have almost no path out of this pride. If golf is something that I just do and I can have fun at and I can try really hard and sometimes it'll work and sometimes it doesn't, then golf is kind of in a right place and I can enjoy both good and bad rounds. If it is what matters the most to me, I'm sunk. So I don't know if that resonates with you, but
Of course,
it's what I
because
have to
it's
remind myself of.
absolutely because it's my profession. So I mean, it's been, and I haven't had a salary since 1992, Tommy.
Mm.
So, it feeds my family, and we have no debt.
Yeah.
Now at age 65, and our two children have no debt. So I'm very thankful for what the golf industry and my golf profession have provided for me now towards the end of my life here and the beginning of our life for our children and the end of my life for my wife, my saintly wife. So you ain't a kidding. It's super important to me. But is it everything?
Yeah.
In my conscious mind, I say no, and God knows my heart and mind better than me, and I might be wrong. God knows the right answer, but in my conscious mind, it is not. But I'm open-minded to being wrong about that.
Well, there's a difference between saying it's important to you, which obviously it is, and golf is important to me, and it's who I am. There's a big difference
Right, of course,
in
right.
those two statements. And for people for whom golf is not that important, often it is who they are, and therefore they have a hard time with the game.
Yeah, just like, again, you not being able to dunk a basketball is not that big a deal to you.
Yeah.
Me not being able to, get the exact right spin on a slap shot in hockey is not that, I can't do it. It's not that
No.
big a deal to me. It doesn't hurt my feelings.
Yeah.
I've not put any effort into it.
Yeah. Hopefully, this has got me thinking about a lot of different things. It has a lot to do with how do we improve. My one of my Achilles heels in golf is, as you and I have talked about it, is the 30 to 60 yard pitch shot. And kind of based on what we've talked about, I'm simply saying that is not a shot that I regularly hit well. And therefore, I'm going to go and practice and try to learn because it's something that can change. It may or may not, depending on how I practice and how I learn, but it's something that can change. And I can enjoy trying to make it change, by practice and effort. And all of a sudden, it can be fun. The truth of the matter is I'm going to go back out onto the golf course, and sometimes I will hit that shot well, and sometimes I won't. That's the only truth out
Yeah,
there.
to me, as you know, I don't like the word practice. I like the word learning. I say
Yeah.
I would want Tommy to go out and say, you know what, I'm going to learn what I'm doing so cotton picking well on these good ones.
Yeah.
And what I have found is Socrates said that the really secret to change is not fixing the old, but building the new. And it's just like a lawn. If a friend called me and said, Joel, help me with my weed problem out here in my front lawn, I say, well, the first thing is it's not a weed problem, it's a grass problem. If you had more grass, you wouldn't have any weeds. There'd be no room for them. So if we learn what we're doing right with our golf shots and our golf swing, I have found over the years, if you get more interested in what we learn doing right, then we keep doing the right thing more and more often, slowly over time, religiously they call it sanctification. Slowly, gradually over time, little decisions just create a whole new person. It's the exact same principle that we find in growing close to Christ. If we just stay focused on Christ and say, well, I want to be like Peter. I want to be like John. I want to be like Matthew, I want to be like Bartimaeus. Well, you could do that, but you're shortchanging yourself and you're spread out. So just stay focused on one man, Jesus Christ. Stay focused on what you're doing right on all those good pitches, those good drives, those good putts, and learn what you're doing right. Learn what's already inside a person, a golfer, and just do that so much. And when you keep repeating that to yourself, I've found the weeds just don't have room to get there. The weeds just kind of fall away.
Well, that I love that. That's real wisdom there. And I think about your practice of when someone asks you how your game went, of just giving a score. In essence, what you're doing is you're practicing what's right. You are eliminating the space and the soil in which pride can grow by simply doing what's right. And how much better is that than simply trying not to be proud? You know, so that's
it gave you some ancient wisdom there from that country song, "Wherever you go, there you are." There's another probably more recent philosopher you've heard about, maybe Popeye.
Yeah.
You heard of him?
Yeah, I've heard of him.
I is what I is, olive oil.
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, that's pretty profound, baby, but I think that's straight from the scriptures.
Yeah. Yeah.
I is what I is, olive oil. I'm a forgiven sinner, baby, and I'm loving being like Christ.
That's great.
I've not been like Christ. I've been a drunk. I've been a smoker. I've been on drugs. I've been resentful and jealous and envious. And I tell you, baby, getting rid of those and just being kind and loving and patient, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control, keeping my mind on doing those things, baby.
Yeah.
It's a lot more fun.
That's great. All right. Well, lots to think about here. I'd love it if you would just offer kind of a final tip to those who are reward for those who are listening this far into the podcast. A final tip, and it can be a tip in general for golf, or it might be a tip of something that that you have seen or practiced that helps kind of tamp down that pride. Either way, any tip. You got lots of tips to offer.
With compassion and utmost sincerity, know thy golf self.
With compassion and utmost sincerity, know thy golf self. All right, we're going to let that sink in for people. That'll keep thinking for a little bit longer. Joel, thank you for coming back on. You've got such wisdom, and we hardly ever really touch on, the wisdom that you have around how to improve in golf. It's just wisdom in life, and it's really enjoyable, and you always make me think a lot. So I appreciate you being on Links for Life. Great conversation. Such an opportunity, enjoyable humility. I'll be thinking about that phrase for a while. Thanks again for being on Links for Life. Thanks everybody for listening. Share the episode, share the thoughts. It's great conversation, really, particularly this one for golfers, but even for people who don't play a lot of golf. It's life for all of us. So thanks so much for listening, everybody. We'll be back next week.